the way the world works is that we're all very smart. We're all very smart, we're all very informed, we're all very opinionated. Until something real happens. When something real happens, it's not that we stop becoming smart. It's that being smart stops being important. And you have to dig deeper. You have to go to a place inside yourself which is not based on how sophisticated I am and how accomplished I am. It's a place of emes. It's a place of emes. Or to say what I'm saying in different words, people live in different parts of the world. There's different kinds of people live in different parts of the world. We live in what's called the Western world, the modern world. And in our world, in our society, because of all kinds of reasons, because we're so rich, and because we're so free, and because of whatever other reasons, we have this notion that we're in charge of our own life. We have this idea that I'm in charge of my own life. In our culture, it's reasonable for a person to write a script for his own life. This is how his life is going to play out. Unfortunately, it never plays out the way we write our script. And unfortunately, when we write our own script, the most important things are oftentimes left at the bottom of the page. I'll get around to it when I finish this and when I finish this. Yeah. In other parts of the world, people's lives are harder. In other places on this planet, people's lives, they don't write scripts. They leave it, they live from day to day. And when they encounter a challenge, a test, which is bigger than their brain and bigger than their heart, they have an easier time. Because we are so conditioned to feel like we're in charge of our life, we have a very, very difficult time dealing with real things. When real things happen, we realize we're not in charge of our life. And in times like these, we need to surrender to something bigger. I'm going to tell you a story that happened in my mishpacha. My mother does not come from a Lubavitcher family. She comes from an American family. My mother's great-grandparents were in this country. And we had in our family a tragedy. My mother had a sister who's now Alea Shalom, whose husband passed away very suddenly. He was 39 years old. A tragedy of tragedies. And I was 22 years old, whatever age I was. My grandfather was at a wedding. We went to this wedding to tell my Zayda that his son-in-law just died. That's what happened. And my grandfather, my mother's father, was an American-born Jew. He lived in Teda V'das, but he had deep, deep Hasidic roots. Teda V'das, you should know, was a Hasidic yeshiva. The Miyas of Teda V'das was a Hasidic Yid. But my grandfather came from Stropke. He came from Hasidic. He had a Hasidic sense of the world. And I was a 22-year-old know-it-all. But I knew that now I got to keep my mouth shut. So my father and I walk into a wedding hall to tell a Yid who's sitting and eating chicken that he has a unglik, a tragedy. So we walked in, and my grandfather saw us, and he understood that we didn't come to find out if the chicken was kosher or how it tasted. So we walked out of the hall, and I want to see how do you tell such a story? So my father, says to my grandfather, Dov. That was my uncle's name, Dov. His name was Dov. My grandfather didn't say a single word. He made a motion like this, which meant it's finished. So my father responded also without any words, this here. So the first words out of my grandfather's mouth were, that was his reaction. I have no questions. The boy said, this doesn't come from a black gemara. This comes from the neshama. How do Jews deal? How does anybody deal with such things? The story with the rebbe, the rebbe, that a bacher passed away. A bacher died. A bacher passed away in the dormitory, so they came to ask the Rebbe how they should tell his mother what happened. So the Rebbe said, Ich weiß nicht. Ich weiß nicht, wie die zelt an Mama Zami Zach. I don't know how you tell a mother something like this. That's what the Rebbe's reaction was. I mean, I don't know the tone, I wasn't there, but those were the words. Ich weiß nicht, wie die zelt an Mama Zami Zach. When things like this occur, how do we react? So we can react by talking a lot, by emoting. Forgive me for saying it. Right? It's very offensive and it's very insulting, but we can act by being Americans. Americans want to gain control over it. We want to be in charge of it. But that's not a Jewish reaction. B'chlal Yidden believe in Hashem. B'chlal Yidden accept that this is Hashem's world. And we're Lubavitcher Chassidim. So I need to say that Lubavitcher Chassidim were raised and indoctrinated and brainwashed and impressed upon that every Jew gets up in the morning and says the world is good. This is the world that Rebbe gave us. The world that Rebbe gave us is a good world. The world we are supposed to live in is a good world. And to the extent that we have a connection to the Rebbe, we live in a good world. The world's not perfect. My life's not perfect. No one's life's not perfect. But one of the trademarks of a chassid, he gets up every morning and he says, Baruch Hashem. Let Hashem is Baruch. I'll tell you a story parenthetically. I think I heard it from Rabbi Feller himself. Yeah, I heard it from Rabbi Moshe Feller, that when the Rebbe spoke in Aleph Nissen about Sheva Mitzvahs, the Rebbe spoke about Yud Nissen. The first time the Rebbe spoke about Sheva Mitzvahs, B'nai Neach, was Yud Nissen. I think it was Mem Gimel, 83. So a fellow Fabrengen asked me yeshiva, and he told the story that he was by the Fabrengen, and after the Fabrengen, the next day he went back to the airport to go home to Minnesota. He has a shlichus. But the Rebbe had spoken about Sheva Mitzvahs, and he felt like he had to do something, and the taxi driver was a non-Jew, was a Ben Naich, who was a Caribbean man, an African-American, a Caribbean man. So he starts talking to him about God, and he's trying to tell him about the idea that all of mankind has an Eibishter, and you have to keep his mitzvahs, and Ayin Re'eh, Ve'ez and Shemas, like the Rebbe spoke. So this taxi driver interrupts him. He says, Rabbi, you know what I know? He says, what do you know? He says, I know Burich Hashem Yoim Yoim. This African American, Burich Hashem Yoim Yoim. He says, how do you know that? He says, I used to work in Williamsburg years before for a survivor. I used to come from Yeneveld. Came from before the war, came to Manhattan, Lower East Side, and he had a kleitel, he had a shop. And he worked for him. You can understand that this is already Pirush Rashi. This is all my inference. Rabbi Feller didn't say all of these details. This is how I understood it. This was a Jew who had survived Hitler, was a broken person, came to this country, was trying to make a life, trying to make a couple of dollars, and he had a shop. And he worked for him. He says, I would come to the shop before he opened. He had a gate in front of his shop, and I had to wait for him. And then when his boss would show up, he'd open up the gate, he'd pull up the gate, he'd open the door to the shop, he'd walk into the shop. As soon as he walked to the front door, he would say, Burich Hashem Yoim Yoim. That was his attitude. Burich Hashem Yoim Yoim is a halach and hilchos Shabbos, you know. Should you prepare a whole week for Shabbos, or should you trust that on Shabbos Hashem is going to give you the best? So there's a Burich Hashem, whatever Hashem gives me today, I need for today. So we, in as much as we're Hasidim, we live in a good world. And it's not easy. And I feel very strongly that one of the things that's slowly happening to us, Anash, Chabad, is we're buying into the pessimism and negativity of the world. Now, nobody calls it pessimism. Nobody calls it negativity. Everybody calls it realism. But Hasidim, by definition, live in a good world. As tough as the world is, live in a good world. Hasikrene oisi ko'ele. Let me put it to you this way. Okay, I'll say it in the Nusach of America. When we are the angriest with God, we need Him the most. When we are the most upset at Hashem, we need Hashem the most. I think we have to think about this. We have to contemplate this. It's a good idea, not an easy idea, but it's a good idea. As the old expression is, if we're not sure what we should say nothing. The judgment of Hashem, what does it say? By Elavaya Yesei Tzaddik Adin. Right? Tomorrow is the Beis Tammuz, it's not going to be Tzaddik Adin. Tzaddik Adin is Hashem Nasan v'Hashem Lakach Yishem Hashem Averech Bata V'Adolam. Tzaddik Adin means Hashem knows what He's doing. Right? We start off from the Psukim and Hazinu, Atzur Tom and Paul, Yichol Derach of Mishpat, Kelamuna Ve'Novel. Tzaddik v'Yasharu, the Eibishter knows what He's doing. This is not just religious indoctrination. This isn't just the way religion deals with this problem. This is life. There is no other way to deal with this kind of a test. There is no other way to do this kind of a test. But to say the Eibishter is the Balabos in the Welt. The Eibishter knows what He's doing. Do we understand? But the Eibishter feared the Welt. And the only way a person, there are people who, this is van a tate, van a mame, van a bride, van a schwester, van a bobbe, van a zete, right? And we're not so close. Many happens to be a student of mine. It's just so unfortunate that in Yud Beis Tammuz we should have to sit at a Fabrengen and have this conversation. But this is the truth. Our relationship with God is not a deal. It's not a business arrangement. I give and I get. I'll give you this and you'll give me this. It's a relationship with the Eibishter. And the best thing we have in our relationship with the Eibishter is the relationship itself. Is the relationship itself. It says in the Toila Eretz Al Blima, the world is suspended on nothingness, right? The physicist will tell you that it's gravity. But Torah says the world is suspended on nothing, but that nothing is the Eibishter Himself. I heard a story, and I'm not going to say a name, but I heard a story. There was a Yid who was very ill, very, very ill. And he had many, many heart attacks, and he knew that sooner or later he's going to have a big one. And he was by the rebbe in Chassidus with his mishpacha. And he told the rebbe, he spoke in Yiddish to the rebbe, he said that this is 1968. He said to the rebbe, I feel like I'm on eggshells. And the rebbe said to him without a hesitation, Du liegst bei dem Eibishten in der Hand. You are in a divine embrace. It's always true for all of us. It's always true for all of us that we're in a divine embrace. But we have other stuff going on. This is a time for us to look inward and find the best in ourselves. This is not easy. Obviously, nobody's happy about this. But we should try to find in ourselves the chassid. He doesn't understand, doesn't agree, but he doesn't talk until he ties himself up in knots of confusion and bitterness and anger and despair. I don't know what else to say, Rabbi Yossi. I just want to say l'chaim, the Eibishter should heal the hearts of those whose hearts are broken, and on one level or another, everybody's heart is broken. And the Eibishter mentions, I'm gesund und freilich bei allem.
I'm sorry I interrupted a little bit, but I think the Rebbe said, we have a great Rebbe. The Rebbe said, Kert der Welt. And the Rebbe said, Heint is the alles great for all jeder Ried. So risking from goals. And the Rebbe is great, so risking uns from goals. Wollen wir gehen bis Simcha.
Amen.
Soll schön sein,